All right, folks, so this part of the class, we're going to take a look at your visual analysis of, and description and analysis of Elena Kalis's imagery here. And what we asked you to do in groups was to take a look at what you thought all of these images had in common, but also choose one to describe and analyze in detail. So, who would like to begin? We have a group of 3 here. Did you folks do the analysis together?
Yes.
Okay, and Amanda is not with us at the moment, so let's see. Jackson, who is your group?
I was with Isabella and Jackson.
All right, so all 3 of you are here, so let's hear from you folks and start with whatever you had to say.
Well, we analyzed mainly the lower left-hand corner image, that one there where she's looking in the mirror. And we thought that they all shared a similar theme of childhood, whimsical fairy tale. We noticed that it was kind of similar to Alice in Wonderland. And then the image that we specifically analyzed, it was one of the, I think it was the sequel to Alice in Wonderland is called Alice Through the Looking Glass. So we thought that it related to that.
Interesting. Okay, so you want to tell us a little bit about, so you actually have read Alice Through the Looking Glass?
I have not, I just know that it exists, and then I looked it up to confirm, so.
Okay.
I don't really know what happens in it, but.
Okay, is everyone familiar with Alice in Wonderland? And if you know Alice in Wonderland, what does this remind us of? Right?
Down the rabbit hole.
Okay, yeah, so down the rabbit hole, but also, of course, self-examination, since there's a mirror there and a looking glass of sorts, and Alice in Wonderland being a lot about identity and growing up and all of that, and so we're you're definitely onto something here. What about this one? What did this image remind people of from Alice in Wonderland?
The Queen of Hearts.
Ah, the Queen of Hearts. And tell us about the Queen of Hearts scene in Alice in Wonderland.
I don't think so. Well, the Queen wants everything to be her way. So, they want she wants red roses, but then the clubs or whatever, they mess up. And they get black roses, so they're painting the roses red. And then the Queen gets upset that it's not her way of what she wants, and she just wants to control everything. And then Alice comes in and throws off her plan, and then she just gets mad at Alice.
And what's her favorite saying?
I've literally watched this months ago.
I know, it's fun.
Off with her head.
Off.
Duh.
Okay, and what does this scene, if you, I remember, reading it as a very young child, but still resonating today, what does this scene sort of remind us of when we think about children in an adult world? Right?
Just disorder, chaos.
Okay.
It's all the cards thrown around.
Yes, the cards are thrown around. Okay, so there are usually rules in a card game, right? If you don't know the rules, it's very confusing. If you don't know how to play the game, adulthood, very confusing, right? And Alice is very confused as she goes through her journey. So the cards are all spilled, or there's disorder and the chaos that is not understood. What about this image here? Did anyone take a look at this one? Right?
I did. I kind of thought of it as a self-reflection, self-discovery thing. And the whole series of photographs kind of leads to that, because it's mainly they use emotion throughout them, and then it kind of ends with her she's motionless, and there's no longer a floor to it, so it's kind of absorbed into itself, sort of thing. kind
Well, what is absorbed into itself?
of, the girl,
The girl is self-absorbed. Okay,
but in like a self-reflective way, rather than a
okay.
negative.
So sort of a meditative way, but also she kind of looks fetal almost too. Do you think she's aware of her surroundings right now?
I think it's aware but unbothered by it, sort of thing.
Interesting. Possibly. What is surrounding her?
Jellyfish.
And what do those do?
They sting, so it could be like aware of the danger but not letting it kind of get to you or interrupt your process.
Okay. Or not aware at all. We don't know, right? We can kind of take a look at the series and see if we can figure it out, do some detective work. We looked at jellyfish earlier with Jackson's artwork. What strikes you about these jellyfish in relationship to a girl, a female subject, a young female subject? What do these jellyfish look like? Describe them.
They're small.
They're small. They're
Pink.
pink. They're delicate. They have all of these sort of feminine qualities we think of stereotypically, right? And yet dangerous. So we could put that together to think what ways is femininity dangerous? What do jellyfish do? They have stingers, right? And so let's keep that in mind as we continue to explore this imagery. Whoopsie. There we go. All right. Anybody look at the top one?
That was us.
Awesome. Okay. Tell us about the top one.
So basically, we said that,
Emily, could you come forward just so we can capture your voice?
yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I'll teach. Basically what we said was that, if I recall correctly, I feel like I'm gonna miss something, we said a lot. But it was a lot about how her head is above the water versus she's in the water. If you perceive the water as something that's like very freeing, very almost like youthful, I guess you could say, it's somewhere where you can let your imagination run wild, as we can see in the bottom pictures, where there's the jellyfish, which are pretty mystical, and just like the playing cards. So I feel like the water as a whole, in all of these images, does represent some sort of youth, whereas her head is above the water, so it's almost like a pull to maybe like reality. And we can also see in the image that she's wearing a formal dress, which could be a display of maturity, but it's being moved and ruffled by the water, so it's almost like a sense of propriety or maturity that's being still kind of unraveled by the movement and motion of youth and like the want to be free and young. There was more that we said that I can't remember off the top of my head. Am I missing anything?
She's alone. So it's
Oh.
isolated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we were saying that that's the only picture where like she's completely alone. Like there's vast amounts of ocean behind her. So it's almost like this is a journey of growth and self-reflection that she needs to go through alone. It's like an isolated journey.
Interesting. Wow, you really picked up on a lot here. So, this notion that how old do you think she is?
7, yeah. That's his
She could be, she could be young, she could be, in the middle, she looks a little older. In the cards, one with the cards. So it's difficult to tell how old she actually is. But yeah, pretty young. So there is this sense of freedom and innocence and flowing and cute little dress, right? And then yet her head is above water. So this awareness, you said, is this new awareness?
Or, yeah, so if you interpreted the ocean as, for instance, like freedom and youth, the era above could be breaking the surface to reality and growing up and seeing the world for what it really is without the distortion and the filter of the water or youth. Or I guess just
Very
being
perceptive.
naive, yeah.
Very perceptive, interpretation there. Now, this is as you pointed out, this is the only one where this is empty around her. But she can't see under the water, right? So there is this sense that she doesn't know what's going on from the neck down, right? Anytime we see an image where the head is either cut off or obscured, there's also the question of identity, right, of this individual person, and we only see the body from the neck down, which does remind us of objectification of the female body, you know, a mature body in things like advertisement, etc., where the neck gets cut off and we don't care about it. All we care about is this body, right? So there is that allusion to that trope. And we're gonna talk, by the way, about something called the male gaze in a second. But there is this allusion to this trope. So there's a lot going on here. There's this, exactly what you said, this sense of innocence and this sense of maybe she's getting her head above water, and then there's this sense of loss of identity at the same time, not knowing what's going on beneath, all of that. So when we look at these, I want you to, did anyone go beyond this still? And think, you know, there are even more themes here. Anything else? Okay, so I want to raise something. Does anybody know about Lewis Carroll? Anything about Lewis Carroll? Google it. Does anybody know why Alice in Wonderland, or the context in which Alice in Wonderland was written?
Wasn't it just a story he was making up for, like, I can't remember if it was his kids or his grandkids, nieces, nephews, something like that, younger family members, and he was like telling it to them each night or something like, I don't remember.
Jackson?
I think it was like a family friend or something, like their younger daughter, he was like kind of obsessed with her and he wrote it for her.
Yeah.
Oh, like that's
Basically,
weird.
yeah, and he was like kind of creepy and stuff.
Yes, there is that historical perspective that perhaps he did have a particular fondness for children. And if you look through that lens, or even if you don't look through that lens, if we see here that, for example, in this image, her dress is hiked up, right, around her. Her legs are fully exposed. She's in a very vulnerable position. And she is surrounded by jellyfish. These are sort of dangerous things. These are things with stingers. Okay, so there can be some sexual connotation here, or let me just put it this way, some sexual creepiness perhaps here. Okay, so yeah, and then stingers. These stingers can be seen as sort of phallic. If we look up here at the top, we see, again, the dress is blown up, right? And there is this sense of, well, there's nothing there but what might be there, you know? So there's just a little undertone of creepiness, just as there is perhaps in Alice in Wonderland, and in that history. So I think also, if you look at the age of the girl, and how she is coming into, in some of these, looks as though she is coming more closer into puberty. We see a potential life change, right? Just as we do in Alice in Wonderland, we see a potential growth. And in Alice in Wonderland, it's sometimes very literal growth, right? And yet confusion. And yet, innocence, loss of potential, loss of innocence, all of this, I think, is going on in these images that were, oops, sorry, I don't know what the heck. And the photographer has carefully planned these things. They're not by accident. So folks, I want to commend you because you have done a super job First of all, identifying Alice in Wonderland, that in and of itself is really, not everybody does that. Not every class grasps that immediately. Number two, that you saw, you immediately saw the cards, the Queen of Hearts illusion, that the jellyfish, we have had this has been the jellyfish class, right? Thank you, Jackson, for all that. That we have a group of 3 who really explored this whole notion of head, breaking the surface of the water and what's underneath, and sense of freedom, sense of all of these things. I think that you've done a great job delving in, and all I did basically was stick the cherry on the top, right? Because you had already done the big work. Good job. Give yourselves a round of applause. Cut that one right there.